he's one of the reasonable GOP minds, but he is big GOP. I mean, he was and continues to be a GOP consultant. He joins us, I believe, from Florida. Isn't that where Jamie Miller is? Jamie Miller, everybody. Look
Thanks,
at you,
Mark.
you big smiling, proud guy. You've vanquished the libs, and you did it all in just a couple months. Impressive.
Yeah, so between the last time I was on your show and now, we faced about 3 hurricanes. I had the eye of one storm come over my house, and the technical center was 1 mile from my house. So while the election was exciting, so was yard cleanup and a lot of other things around here.
It doesn't look like any of the pictures on the wall behind you were even disturbed in the least, or did you have to rehang them after all the chaos of this storm?
No, this was the storm didn't enter the house, so we were pretty lucky.
All right, good.
I'm high and dry, so.
Hey, Jamie Miller, you've seen a lot of elections, and you've even coached and strategized to win elections. Tell me what happened with this one.
You know, there's 2 sides of every coin, right? So I think one side was, I think Harris failed to make the sale. And you look at people like Democrats like Nate Silver and James Carville, who have said that I don't think she ever really explained to the American people who she was, what she wanted to do, and why she should be president. She didn't really she said that she was at one point, I think she confused voters where she said, hey, listen, I'm with Joe Biden. I was with part of 100% of his decisions. And then when she was asked point blank, what was she going to do differently, knowing that a president is going to do something differently, she couldn't come up with anything. And I don't think anybody believed that she was going to be more moderate than Joe Biden. And so she allowed Trump to define her as more liberal than Joe Biden. And I think the other part, on the other side of the coin, I think Americans felt like Democrats went too far. They went too far on electric vehicle mandates. They went too far on, which a lot of the green energy stuff, which drove prices and transportation costs and all those things up. They went too far with boys and girls bathrooms and boys and girls sports and men and women's prisons. And so you start adding all of those things. I don't know that any one of them is something that made Trump win or Harris lose. But I think the narratives between the 2 campaigns told, that story.
It's interesting that in that summary, which is a fair summary, I think, of the talking points from the GOP, you include, for example, the notion that there are mandates regarding electric vehicles. And like, again, I don't mean to nitpick, but I'll just pick that out of your list as you gave it. That strikes me as not moving too many meters. I mean, and you, I think, incorrectly, with respect always to you, hang, some kind of economic cost to these mandates on electric vehicles as though they had contributed to inflation in any way, which is just, I think, not in the least bit demonstrable. But I think the other stuff you say really obviously, on some level, and by the way, when I say obviously now, I mean, if you'd talked to me a month ago, maybe it wasn't so obvious to me. It did cut. It did weigh. And I thought the cultural wedge issues that were summarized, I was talking about the commercial that they ran during football over and over and over again about, she wants to spend your tax dollars to get this illegal immigrant who's now in prison a sex change operation. To me, those were great spots. I mean, they were really perfect. And so if it was damaging to her. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So when you look at this election, I know he won the popular vote, which is what makes this thing, which is the coldest slap in the face, right? I think many of us libs were thinking that he would win the Electoral College because of the way the Electoral College is set up, but he would, be resoundingly repudiated for just the loathsome guy that he is. But as it turns out, people have a different view of him.
I've written, I think that people voted for Trump, the people who voted for Trump, one of the reasons why was they voted because he will lead us through fire, and they were willing to look past the fires he sets. And so my first political boss, they came up to me, my boss came up to me and said, you work for Boss Slade and he leads us through fire, but by God, he sets half of them. And I think if you voted for Trump, you kind of have that same feeling about him. It's like, okay, at least we know he's going to get us through. And I know that everybody in America doesn't feel that way about him, but I certainly believe that the voters who voted for him, and I think the other thing that people said was that these political prosecutions went too far. And, people are like, oh, well, he was a convicted felon. And I think with their vote, people said, no, he's not. He's not guilty, that these were political prosecutions. And I know, listen, you can argue this was, he won with 50.4% of the popular vote or thereabout by the time it all gets said and done. So it's a barely over 50%, but it's still about a 3-point popular vote win. And I think that those types of things made a difference. I don't want to say that electric vehicles made a difference in the mandate made a difference in the economy. I think it's just more of that heavy-handed government of, you're going to do this. And in Florida, for instance, we just faced these 3 hurricanes, and I kind of joked a little bit about it at the beginning of my spot. But, the truth of the matter is, if you have to, in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, you have the population of Maryland. And if you have to evacuate that area, you're putting 10 million people on the road to get to Orlando in electric vehicles. And if you leave your electric vehicle behind, and this is what happened to a lot of people in storms where their houses didn't get flooded, but their garages got flooded, the electric vehicles caught on fire and burned the house down. And so to sit there and say that these things are 100% safe, I think under normal circumstances, everybody believes that they are. But under extraordinary circumstances, they're dangerous. And to mandate that is I think just part of the heavy hand of the past administration.
Okay, I mean, it's fair. We could argue to what degree there should be a mandate and to, on what timetable, et cetera. I think, to do nothing is just a bizarre obstinacy that we really just can't have right now. I mean, you do have to do things, just as you people in Florida are having to figure out, as residents of a state that is being pummeled by this stuff regularly, by more ferocious weather systems. You have to do some things differently. You can't just build back exactly the same way. And so you bulletproof your home in different ways from some of these climate catastrophes that are coming in greater numbers. But just on the point, I lost my home in our neighborhood to fire. Okay, this is California, so we that's our thing. Okay, and
I'm sorry you went through that.
Yeah, thank you. But, point is, with a combustion engine, what happens? Fire comes up the hill and the car blows up, and that catches the main house and structure on fire. So I can go, well, so they're not that safe, is what you're saying. I mean, okay, well, dude. I think
what we're agreeing is that you should have a different choice than what I have, right? And so government shouldn't mandate that choice. We as consumers should be able to determine that based on our own individual lifestyles and where we live.
Yeah, on some level, I do think that we also have to face a pivot, though, wouldn't you say, against fossil fuel? Even the fossil fuel companies are looking at a pivot. Don't you accept any pivot at all, or do you want to just go fossil fuel?
I think we should do things that
combustion
make sense,
engines
right?
all the way. Go ahead. Yeah,
I think we should do things that make sense, and certainly here in Florida, solar makes sense, right? And if we can do that in a fair way, but if you go by and you look at the amount of land that is used in these solar fields for the amount of energy that is created today, it doesn't make a lot of sense to only have solar. We shouldn't mandate only solar in Florida because you can't create enough through solar. And by the way, Mark, in just a very few short years, because of AI, because of electric vehicles, because of these other things, we're going to have to create 30% more electricity, certainly by 2030, probably before. And we're going to have to build the grid. Our grid isn't capable of withstanding that. So we're going to have to build the grid. So I would argue that electric vehicle batteries are the nuclear waste of the 2030s. And, if we're going to have nuclear waste, maybe we should go back to nuclear power.
Well, I do think that there are aspects to building out the grid and this alternative energy that haven't been A, articulated well, or B, thought out super well. I kind of agree that you should ramp up. They kind of put the cart before the horse on this. I think they naturally felt that the can would be kicked down the road. And I wish I could think of one more cliche I could throw in right now. But the reality is that the idea was mandate, or at least make this a goal, and then the electric grid and other details will catch up. I don't know that that's the best way to pursue public policy, but that's kind of the way they did it. There was a lot here that wasn't about electric vehicles, although I do get that electric vehicles were the poster child maybe for a lot of other stuff, lib woke policies. I do think that the lib woke agenda affected people's view of America. They're just kind of sick of it on some level. But, even the libs are sick of it on some level, okay? I think the successful thing that you guys did was that you rolled all the arguments in to a really well-messaged kind of strategy. I'll just call it a media strategy. And I don't know that the Democrats did. And I also feel, and this is a big question, I feel that even if Kamala Harris had had more of a runway, I don't know that it would have mattered. I don't know that the right issues were being handled in the right ways.
I don't think it would have mattered because she ended up being right where Joe Biden was prior to his debate in June, right? And so outside of Nevada, probably coming Republican, the states looked exactly like they were going to look prior to that debate in June. And so it turned out that it was always Trump's race to lose, and he didn't lose it. I was on a podcast the Monday before the election, and I said it'll be interesting tomorrow night what I decide to write in my blog, just to because Kamala Harris had this whole negative campaign. She, in the last 10 days, she had either herself or surrogates call Trump supporters bigots, Nazis, stupid, weird, go down the list of names she was calling. And then in the last 72 hours, she said, I'm going to unify the country. And on the flip side, Donald Trump just kept the pedal on the gas. She's not qualified. She's not qualified. She's not qualified. And so on the eve of the election, I kind of felt like it was going to go Trump's way because I didn't think there was anything that was going to that made this huge difference in Harris's favor. But I questioned whether or not on Wednesday morning, if we would have been talking about, well, should have Trump said, hey, I'm going to unify the country the way Harris did. At the end of the day, I don't think people believed Harris. I just don't think they believed her when she said she was capable or even wanted to unify the country.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. I'll never know, and you'll never know. I thought, and I would take issue a little bit with your narrative. I think her general disposition, Kamala Harris's general disposition, leaving aside others. I mean, Biden steps up in it every time he opens his mouth. So the thing when he could, the garbage thing or whatever, that was just, Biden. That wasn't like a planned surrogate who was making a comment. But I thought Kamala Harris's disposition, again, you can say it was inauthentic or whatever, was one of unity. I will not only, toward the end, it came in the form of I will not only don't view you as, as garbage or whatever she actually said, but I will give you a seat at the table. You know what I mean? I thought that was you might have thought that was just rhetoric, but I thought that generally speaking up to that point, look, she campaigned with Liz Cheney. I mean, I felt that she was quite a moderate choice as a lib Democrat. She wasn't some alt-left type.
But honestly, do you think that average Americans, average voters felt like Harris was going to be more moderate than Biden, or was she going to be more liberal?
I thought, I again, can't know, feel as though they felt that it would be more of the same. I think that's kind of what, like everything's on cruise control.
I don't think she made that point clear. I think she said at points, she's like, I'm going to be like Biden. And then other points, she said, I'm not going to be like Biden. And then when she said, I'm not going to be like Biden, she never articulated, hey, listen, I'm going to be more conservative in this way, but more liberal in that way. And I think Americans would have accepted that type of answer depending on what she, specifically she was speaking about. But she didn't even come to anything like that. She tried to, I think one of her regrets will be, from a campaign standpoint, would be taking in Biden's campaign team and not having, quote, her own people guide her, because the Biden campaign team, she certainly squandered. When I was on your show the first time, I said there's 3 stages of Kamala Harris. There's excitement, relief, and regret, right? And so she squandered the excitement phase. There was a good 30 or 40 days until that first debate where she should have been out there speaking to every single outlet she could, not just The View, not just Drew Barrymore, but being out there in the world, capturing that excitement. And she really didn't. She should have been doing interviews. Remember, like by Labor Day, Republicans were saying, oh, it's been 60 days or 40 days, and she hasn't had a real interview yet. And then she finally sat down for a scripted interview that went okay, but not great. She had a debate that I think was a draw. You thought she won. But it was okay. It wasn't great. There wasn't.
Well, the only reason she won is because I think he imploded. I didn't feel as though she distinguished herself so well in the debate. But the other thing I would say is that she, and I said this all along, she needed to make the podcast tour. That's the interview tour that she wanted. And I thought it was capitulating completely to the demands of the media that she sat down in the first place with whomever she sat down, MSNBC or whatever. I felt that was a completely concocted BS argument, birthed by the GOP successfully. We're not seeing her sit down and do a real interview like our guy who goes on Fox and Friends and gets a back rub every week to 10 days. I mean, come on.
Back rubs are important, Mark.
Yeah. Anyway, I love rolling around the schoolyard with you, and I have mad respect for your takes also. So let's continue this, and let's continue it. Let's continue it soon, because there's some extremely controversial appointments that are being spoken of and that likely will happen. And I'd love to keep this conversation going, because even you, and I think you are fairly reasonable, although, we're just getting to know each other. I think you and I can agree that some of these things might fall into the shocking category. And I don't know if you can say it, but once in a while you can just blink very quickly and indicate that that's what you believe.
Well, I haven't seen it yet. We'll see. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak.
The book is Reasonable Arguments. Jamie Miller, the GOP consultant, turned regular on this show. I look forward to the next time. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.